Dubai has been exploiting Africa's gold. But who's behind this masterminded heist? If you think it's just one nation, you're mistaken.
It was released earlier today. It says that in 2022, at least 435 tons of gold were smuggled out of Africa. 435 tons. That's more than 1 ton of gold every day.
In reality, multiple nations have banded together to plunder Africa's gold. And tragically, while they grow richer, Africa remains trapped in economic instability. They build empires on African gold and in return, give nothing. So, who's really behind it all? Let's find out. Africa, blessed with immense natural wealth, has long been the target of foreign exploitation. From the dark days of colonization to the modern era of globalization, Africa's resources have consistently been drained by those who see its riches as theirs for the taking. Today, the United Arab Emirates UAE, with its gleaming skyscrapers and luxurious lifestyle, stands at the center of a new chapter in this age-old story, the illegal gold trade. In 2022 alone, an astounding 93% of the illegal gold entering the UAE originated from Africa, totaling 435 tons worth a staggering $35 billion. This wealth, representing 40% of Africa's total gold production and 12% of the world's, is being taken off with ruthless efficiency. But this is no mere tale of one nation's greed. The West, with its long history of exploiting African resources, is a silent partner in this heist, benefiting from the plundered gold that flows through Dubai. This all starts to make sense when you think of what's happening in Africa in terms of its economy. Have you ever wondered why, despite Africa's immense natural wealth, so many of its people live in poverty? The answer lies in the systemic extraction of Africa's resources by foreign powers, a modern-day continuation of the colonial mindset that has plagued the continent for centuries. The latest manifestation of this exploitation is the illegal gold trade, with the UAE at the forefront. In 2022, nearly half of Africa's gold was channeled out of the continent illegally, with Dubai serving as the gateway to global markets. The UAE's role in this illegal trade is central. Dubai, often referred to as the City of Gold, has become the hub for gold trading, attracting traders and investors from around the world. However, beneath the glittering surface lies a dark underbelly of corruption, smuggling, and exploitation. The gold that makes its way to Dubai is often mined under dangerous and unethical conditions in Africa, bypassing regulations and taxes that would benefit the continent. This is not just a problem of legality. It is a deep-seated moral issue that reveals the persistent inequalities between Africa and the rest of the world. But let's be clear, this isn't just about the UAE. The West plays a crucial, if quieter, role in this exploitation. The gold that arrives in Dubai doesn't stay there. It moves on to Western markets, where it fuels economies and fills the coffers of multinational corporations. These corporations, many of them headquartered in Europe and North America, are the ultimate beneficiaries of this stolen wealth. They purchase the gold, often with little regard for its origins, and sell it at a significant profit. The irony is thick. Countries that claim to champion human rights and transparency are complicit in a system that exploits Africa's resources and people. The process is insidiously simple. Gold is mined in Africa, often in small artisanal operations. Instead of being processed and sold legally, much of it is smuggled out, avoiding taxes and regulations. The gold passes through various hands, often ending up in Dubai, where lax regulations make it easy to clean the gold and sell it on the global market. The profits are enormous, but Africa sees none of it. Instead, the continent is left with environmental destruction, social disintegration, and the economic impoverishment that accompanies this illegal trade. All in all, if Africa isn't reaping the benefits of its gold, then who is? The answer is multifaceted. At the center of this web is the UAE, specifically Dubai, which has become a global hub for gold trading. But the profits don't stop there. Western nations and corporations are the ultimate beneficiaries, as they purchase this gold, often without questioning its origins. The irony is thick. Countries that claim to champion human rights and transparency are complicit in a system that exploits Africa's resources and people. Dubai's role as a middleman is crucial. By providing a marketplace where illegal gold can be sold, the city facilitates the flow of wealth from Africa to the West. The city's gleaming skyscrapers and luxurious lifestyles are, in part, funded by the misery and exploitation of African miners. But it's not just about wealth, it's about power. By controlling the flow of gold, the West and its allies maintain a stranglehold on global markets. Africa is kept in a position of dependency, forced to sell its resources at a fraction of their value, while others reap the rewards. The Western financial system is deeply intertwined with this exploitation. Banks and financial institutions, often based in Europe and North America, provide the infrastructure that allows this gold to be traded on global markets. These institutions benefit from the trade, taking their cut of the profits while remaining willfully ignorant of the human cost. The system is designed to protect the interests of the powerful, ensuring that the wealth generated by Africa's gold never returns to the continent. But the exploitation doesn't end with the banks. The gold that reaches Western markets is used in a variety of industries, from electronics to jewelry. Multinational corporations, eager to meet consumer demand, turn a blind eye to the origins of their raw materials. As long as the gold keeps flowing, they see no need to ask difficult questions. The result is a global supply chain that is deeply tainted by corruption and exploitation, yet operates under the guise of legitimacy. The role of Western governments in this system cannot be overlooked. These governments, which often espouse the values of democracy and human rights, are complicit in the exploitation of Africa's resources. Through trade agreements, foreign aid, and diplomatic relations, they create the conditions that allow this illegal trade to flourish. They provide the legal and economic frameworks that enable corporations to extract wealth from Africa while giving little or nothing in return. The profits from Africa's gold are staggering, but they are concentrated in the hands of a few. The wealth generated by this trade could be used to lift millions out of poverty, build schools and hospitals, and invest in the future of the continent. Instead, it is siphoned off to foreign banks and corporations, leaving Africa with the environmental destruction, social unrest, and economic inequality that are the true costs of this global heist. How has the exploitation of Africa's gold been allowed to continue unchecked for so long? The answer lies in the combination of political, economic, and legal structures that have been carefully crafted to protect the interests of the powerful. The West, with its long history of colonialism and economic dominance, has played a central role in creating and maintaining these structures. First, there is the issue of legal frameworks. Many African countries have laws and regulations designed to protect their resources, but these are often undermined by external pressures. International trade agreements, often negotiated by Western powers, frequently include clauses that benefit multinational corporations at the expense of African nations. These agreements make it difficult for African countries to control their resources, forcing them to sell their gold at prices dictated by the global market, where Western interests hold sway. The influence of multinational corporations cannot be underestimated. These entities, with their vast resources and global reach, have the power to shape economic policies in their favor. They lobby governments, both in Africa and abroad, to create favorable conditions for their operations. This often involves weakening environmental regulations, reducing taxes, and suppressing labor rights, all in the name of profit. The result is a system where the wealth generated by Africa's gold flows out of the continent, while the costs are borne by the local population. Then there's the issue of political influence. Western nations have a long history of meddling in African politics, supporting regimes that align with their interests while undermining those that do not. This political interference ensures that African governments remain dependent on foreign aid and investment, making it difficult for them to take a strong stand against the exploitation of their resources. The West uses its economic and political power to keep Africa in a state of dependency, ensuring that the flow of gold and other resources continues unabated. This political influence is often exerted through diplomatic channels and international organizations. Western nations, through institutions like the International Monetary Fund (IMF) and the World Bank, impose economic policies on African countries that prioritize the interests of foreign investors over the needs of local populations. These policies, often disguised as economic reforms, are in reality tools of economic control, designed to keep Africa's wealth flowing to the West. Finally, there is the issue of information control. Western media often portrays Africa as a continent plagued by corruption and conflict, ignoring the role that foreign powers play in perpetuating these problems. This narrative serves to justify the exploitation of Africa's resources, painting it as a necessary evil in a region that cannot govern itself. The reality, however, is that Africa's problems are often the result of external interference, not internal failings. The media's portrayal of Africa as a place of chaos and disorder serves to obscure the deeper truths about the continent's exploitation. By focusing on the symptoms, poverty, corruption, and conflict, Western narratives conveniently sidestep the underlying causes, which are often rooted in the very structures of power that the West has established and continues to maintain. This narrative control helps to perpetuate the status quo, ensuring that the global audience remains largely ignorant of the true extent of Africa's exploitation and the complicity of Western powers in this ongoing heist. In summary, the system that allows for the exploitation of Africa's gold is not an accident of history. It is a deliberately constructed framework that benefits the powerful at the expense of the weak. It is a system built on the pillars of legal manipulation, economic domination, political interference, and media control. These elements work together to ensure that Africa remains a source of cheap resources for the world, while the continent itself is left to deal with the consequences. Now the question is, what happens when a continent's wealth is systematically drained away? The impact on Africa and its people is devastating and multifaceted, touching every aspect of life on the continent. The illegal gold trade not only robs Africa of its resources, but also exacerbates poverty, fuels conflict, and destroys the environment. The West's insatiable demand for gold is costing lives in Africa, and the consequences of this exploitation are far-reaching. The environmental impact is perhaps the most visible and immediate. Artisanal mining, which is often the source of illegal gold, is incredibly destructive to the environment. Miners use toxic chemicals, like mercury and cyanide, to extract gold, poisoning rivers, soil, and entire ecosystems in the process. Forests are cleared, rivers are diverted, and landscapes are scarred, leaving behind toxic wastelands where fertile land once thrived. These environmental catastrophes are not just local problems. They contribute to broader issues like climate change, biodiversity loss, and desertification, which affect the entire continent. The people who live in these mining regions are often the first to suffer. Communities are displaced, water sources are contaminated, and traditional livelihoods are destroyed. For many, the land that once provided food, water, and shelter is now a barren, toxic landscape. This environmental devastation has a direct impact on the health and well-being of these communities. The use of mercury in mining, for example, can cause serious health problems, including neurological damage and birth defects. The contamination of water sources can lead to the spread of diseases, further exacerbating the public health crises that many African nations already face. The human cost of the illegal gold trade extends beyond environmental destruction. The trade often operates in regions where the rule of law is weak, and as a result, it is frequently controlled by armed groups, including terrorist organizations and criminal syndicates. These groups use the profits from gold mining to fund their activities, fueling conflicts and perpetuating cycles of violence and instability. The illegal gold trade is not just an economic issue, it is a security issue that threatens the stability of entire regions. The economic impact of this exploitation is equally severe. The billions in lost tax revenue mean that African governments have less money to invest in essential services like education, healthcare, and infrastructure. This perpetuates a cycle of poverty and underdevelopment, making it even harder for Africa to break free from the grip of foreign exploitation. The lack of investment in critical infrastructure means that many African nations are unable to fully develop their economies, leaving them dependent on foreign aid and investment. The social fabric of many communities is also torn apart by the illegal gold trade. The influx of money into these regions can lead to social unrest, as wealth disparities grow and communities become divided. The presence of armed groups and the constant threat of violence further erodes trust and social cohesion, making it difficult for communities to work together to improve their circumstances. The illegal gold trade, therefore, not only destroys the environment and the economy, but also undermines the very foundations of African society. The West's role in this exploitation is not just a moral failing, it is a crime against humanity. The benefits of Africa's gold are enjoyed by people in far-off lands, while the costs are borne by the people who live on the continent. This is a clear example of how the global economic system is rigged against Africa, and why it is so important for the continent to reclaim its resources and use them for the benefit of its people. In the final section, we'll explore what can be done to change this situation and reclaim Africa's wealth for its people. So, is there a way out of this vicious cycle? The answer is yes, but it requires bold action and a complete rethinking of how Africa's resources are managed. The first step is for African nations to take control of their gold production. This means halting the export of raw gold and instead investing in local refineries. By keeping the refining process within Africa, countries can retain more of the value of their resources, create jobs, and stimulate local economies. Building local refineries is not just about economics, it's about reclaiming sovereignty over Africa's resources. For too long, the continent has been at the mercy of foreign powers that dictate the terms of trade. By refining their gold, African nations can set their prices, control the supply chain, and ensure that more of the profits stay within the continent. This is a crucial step toward breaking the cycle of dependency that has kept Africa in a subordinate position in the global economy. But this is just the beginning. African nations must also work together to renegotiate international trade agreements, ensuring that they have the power to control their resources. This means standing up to the West and refusing to accept deals that benefit multinational corporations at the expense of African people. It also means strengthening regional cooperation, so that Africa can present a united front in global trade negotiations. Organizations like the African Union (AU) have a critical role to play in coordinating these efforts and ensuring that Africa speaks with one voice on the global stage. There is also a need for greater transparency and accountability in the gold trade. African governments must crack down on corruption and ensure that the profits from gold mining are used to benefit the people, not just a small elite. This requires robust legal frameworks and strong institutions that can enforce them. It also requires the support of civil society, which must hold governments and corporations accountable for their actions. Initiatives like the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative (EITI) can help to promote transparency and ensure that the wealth generated by Africa's resources is used for the public good. In addition to these domestic efforts, there is a need for a broader shift in global attitudes toward Africa. The West must recognize that Africa is not a charity case, but a continent with immense potential. This means ending the patronizing narratives that portray Africa as a problem to be solved, and instead recognizing it as a partner with valuable contributions to make to the global economy. The exploitation of Africa's resources is not just an African problem, it's a global one, and it requires a global solution. Part of this solution involves reforming the global financial system to make it more equitable and just. Western banks and financial institutions must be held accountable for their role in facilitating the illegal gold trade. This could involve stricter regulations, more rigorous oversight, and harsher penalties for those who engage in or enable illegal activities. The international community must also take a stand against tax havens and other mechanisms that allow corporations to hide their profits and avoid paying their fair share of taxes. By closing these loopholes, the world can ensure that more of Africa's wealth stays on the continent, where it belongs. Finally, there is a need for a new global movement that demands justice for Africa. This movement must bring together activists, civil society organizations, and governments from around the world to fight for a more equitable distribution of the world's resources. It must challenge the power structures that have kept Africa in a position of dependency for so long, and demand that the global economy be restructured to benefit everyone, not just the wealthy and powerful. This is not just a matter of fairness, it is a matter of survival. If the world continues to exploit Africa's resources without regard for the consequences, the entire planet will suffer. The time has come for Africa to stop being the world's ATM and start being the master of its destiny. The West may have profited from Africa's wealth for centuries, but the power to change the narrative lies in Africa's hands. It's time to use that power and ensure that the next chapter in the story of Africa's gold is one of empowerment, prosperity, and justice. Do you think nations should start seeing Africa as a partner rather than a free resources bank? What does Africa need to do to make these nations treat Africa right? Let us know in the comments section. Should isolation from such nations be a good decision? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.